Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Playbook with myself, Kim Clark, and my dad, Alan Beaulieu, well-known economist, and our dear friend, Matt Sheidow, sales strategist. Matt, happy to have you back for a couple more episodes with us.
Thrilled to join you again. I really enjoy these, so thank you for having me.
You don't look like a deer, but never mind. That's a different story.
Moving on from that, today's episode, we're continuing on in our planning for 2026 with confidence and using a data-driven approach. So today's topic is discussing the competitive landscape and how to gather, interpret, and act on competitive intelligence that is readily available through Google searches, AI searches, and but I tend to love to do a little competitor stalking. So looking forward to diving in. Who wants to kick us off in today's episode?
I'll go first, if you don't mind. Matt, is that all right with you?
Yeah, please.
Okay, good. When it comes to 2026, and our subject matter today, I think there's two things that need to be focused on. And one is the health of the consumer or your customer, because it doesn't have to be a consumer, it could be B2B. And there are signs for that. You can look at the strength of business orders, CapEx, whatever your field happens to be. If you're in the service industry, what is the demand pull in your service industry? That data is out there. And using the rate of change methodology we've discussed before, you can get beyond the salesperson's perspective, which may or may not be spot on. It could be spot on, but you can get something empirical. So you can know whether activity's picking up, slowing down, whatever, and that helps you assess what you should be doing when it comes to your competitive advantages, your pricing, expectations, budget, the whole shooting match. The other thing is you want to be keeping a sharp eye on inflation. Interestingly, inflation just came out for September at 3%. And at first it was, well, that's the highest we've seen in a while. Then the next day it's like, well, it's not so bad. And the Fed will be lowering interest rates. And it's really difficult to get a handle on. But I think we're going to see inflation be fairly calm for the next couple quarters. And then we're going to see it picking up later in 26, second half of the year, let's say. Watch for that, because as inflation starts picking up, you're going to find that pricing becomes more important, or your competitive advantages become more important. If you're a commodity purveyor, if you sell screws, it's a big deal. If you're selling something that has more finesse to it, maybe that's the right word, then you can use that pricing to your advantage to help the profits. It really depends on what it is you're selling. But you want to watch consumer purchasing health, and you want to watch inflation.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you. Matt, what were your thoughts to kick us off?
Yeah, and that goes along with that to kind of tie into, hey, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you understand what your competitors are doing, and where maybe you need to focus some of your efforts to show what you can highlight as your uniques, or how you can address what your competitors are doing. One of the ways you can do that is just by talking with your clients, right? I think that's something we don't do enough in the situations where maybe we lose deals or we have competitive deals. Just talking with our clients to understand, in those lost deals, what did we lose them to? What was it that our prospect was looking for that maybe our competitor could offer that we couldn't, right? That's something that I think if we are having those conversations, but not just having those conversations, recording that information, capturing that, that gives us greater insight, right? When we go to trade shows, we can see often our competitors at those trade shows. It makes sense to stop by and listen to what they're saying, to hear what they are trumpeting as their strengths, to give us a better understanding of maybe how do we compete against that? What are the banana peels we can lay down? How can we differentiate ourselves? So just a couple different ways that, from a sales perspective, that we can get a better insight into what our competitors are doing and how we need to respond.
I love that. And so, Matt, you and I years ago coined the term smarketing, our lovely blend between sales and marketing. So I'd love to take what both of you just said and how do we build that into kind of an actionable plan for people that are listening? Because you can have sales reps at trade shows hearing this information, but how do they relay that back to the people that need that to form the messaging, that put copy together, that update websites with competitive advantage statements, and then Dad, the information that you were sharing regarding keeping an eye on inflation and all, I would make the assumption that's maybe more of an executive role or somebody in a pricing role versus again the people that are in charge of putting copy together, scheduling campaigns, and putting that messaging out there. So how do we take it from just gathering this information at these different levels and then tie it into a system of communication sharing?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely critical, right? Having information and doing nothing with it, you're not going to achieve much. So yeah, capturing the information, right? Understanding, you said it's marketing. This is something you and I believe wholeheartedly, right? They are one, right? You can't have one success without the other. They need to work hand in hand in terms of crafting messaging, understanding what we're going to our clients with that messaging, what language the salespeople should be using to tie into those competitive advantages, those uniques, those strengths and weaknesses, to deal with those competitive challenges. So yeah, there needs to be a two-way path of communication between sales as they're talking with clients, understanding why they're losing some of these sales, what they're losing to, and sharing that with the marketing team. It could result in new product ideation, maybe just new messaging, right? It might not be something that we don't offer. It just might be that we're not getting that message out clearly. So capturing that, if you have a CRM, again, capturing that into the CRM, that's something that could be leveraged to communicate both ways. And then having the marketing team kind of share with the sales. This is our campaign. This is what we're going after. Understanding what are the pains, what are the needs of our clients, and how do we incorporate that messaging into that marketing campaign.
I like, Matt, how you used to, when we were together, and we did this on the economic side, and I think you were good at doing it on the sales side, which was basically, I call it one voice. You know, you taught a system on how to do it. You regularly communicated, and I think that's what came to mind, Kim, when you said something. You can get all this kind of information, and you don't communicate just once. You have to regularly communicate it and enforce it, and make sure people are understanding the one voice that they need to have given what's going on and what you have learned. Because it does no good to learn it, tell people it, and then have your 15-person team decide, they don't really think it's important, so they're not going to pursue that. That's when the system begins to fall apart. There has to be follow-up and conversation and all the rest of that. I could be wrong, but it seems to me that's what you were doing, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
Or you fooled me completely, one or the
other. Excellent work.
That's right. Well done, sir.
Either way.
I agree. And so I'm trying to think of what were some of the steps that we used to take, Matt, to form that Smarketing brain, right? Because you were the sales strategist, I was the marketing strategist, and we collaborated with our two teams. So there was, you mentioned CRM.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a point of advice for listeners. We mentioned that in our previous episode as well. So again, for those that are operating without a CRM system, that's a must. And then also meetings, like every week we would have marketing share with the sales staff, things that were going on, things that we were seeing, and then vice versa. We would have sales sharing things that they were hearing from customers with the marketing staff. You and I would meet regularly for brainstorming conversations, and work just working more collaboratively than in silos. I think that's a big mistake that I see a lot of businesses making, that they say this is the marketing department, that's the sales department, and they operate in silos, where it was our perspective, no, break down that wall. Smarketing is one department and they have to collaborate and work together as one.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing, right? I remember marketing creating just an amazing page that showed the content that was going out with the schedule, with the calendar. So the sales team understood what messaging was going out, what we could echo from that messaging to kind of reinforce that. So just having that information available to us, like you said, to share that information, whether we're sharing it on LinkedIn, sharing it with clients, right? I think that was critical to not just rely on marketing to get this information out, but it's also a tool that the sales team could leverage.
Well, going back to gathering, interpreting, and acting on competitive intelligence to sharpen our strategic positioning. So there's the standard SWOT analysis that I'm going to make the assumption that our listeners know about: your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and doing that analysis. What are some other tactics for putting together competitor intelligence? For example, I've used a lot of websites like Statista, was it DMB Hoovers? I look up what is our industry NAICS code, and then you can use those other sites to look up companies with that same NAICS code. So that way I can get a list of, based upon industry classification, who they're considering my competitors to be. And then I can look up their websites to see, are they true competitors, direct competitors? There's also indirect competitors. I've had some clients tell me I don't have any competitors. And so that seems to be a misnomer, that some people think that they're so unique and in such a niche market that they don't have any competition in the marketplace. But after we peel the onion back, we see, no, you do have competitors, and here's what they are. And an example of that can even be that somebody takes it in-house and does the work by themselves. And so that person themselves is a competitor to the services that you are providing. So just curious from you both, what are other tips and tricks out there for gathering and interpreting and acting on competitive intelligence?
Matt covered a really important one when there are trade shows, but you can um, go in the old days. I'm not sure that's I'm stumbling because I'm not sure how applicable it is anymore. Because in the old days, if you could talk to a purchasing agent, and they would be a great source of information about other people who come in the door and what they were doing and that sort of thing. So. It's probably not that easy anymore because so much of it is just digital and not a lot of face-to-face conversation. But um, a purchasing agent type person can be a great source of information as to what is going on in the competitive world. But it's not hard to go to other people's websites and see what they're promoting or not promoting, and see what their pluses and strengths are that they're touting, and even in a lot of cases prices. So I had somebody tell me the other day, they just have a website. And I thought, well, that's probably the most important face you have for your company, and you're dismissing it as just a website, you know. I said, that tells me something about them as a competitor. It's just it's interesting that what you can learn by just getting on the keyboard and working that way. And the sources you mentioned, Kim, are certainly good ones. Keep your eyes open and look around. It sounds so basic, but it is so very important.
Yeah, and AI has made it so much faster than it used to be. What took me forever to do a competitive analysis in years past has become much faster using tools like ChatGPT, Copilot, although I prefer GPT over Copilot. But you can even ask it to do a competitive analysis for you, and you just prompt it with certain key things that you're looking for. And it has been spitting out, I've been working with my clients with this, and been spitting out just tables of, all right, here's the list of competitors, here's their strengths compared to your strengths, here's their weaknesses compared to your weaknesses. Of course, you have to fact check everything because AI still hallucinates and tends to cherry pick some of the information, but it has certainly narrowed down the gathering and interpreting steps of this competitive analysis a lot.
Yeah, and I think because that sort of analysis is so readily available now, in part because of AI, and a big part because of AI, right? That I know the significant efforts, Kim, you went through generating those SWOT analyses for the company. Just hours and hours poured into that, and now just having this easily accessible. It's just an incredible. We'll lop that into the opportunity for every company. So then it becomes, how do you act on this? What do you do with this information, right? And from a sales perspective, right, two things jump to mind. One, communicate, right? Communicate that SWOT with the team. So as you're going through a pipeline review, you can understand, hey, which opportunities are we working that have maybe these threats or these weaknesses, and what do we need to do in that situation? Which opportunities, which deals, I should say, have are tied into our opportunities and strengths, right? So just in a pipeline review, we can have that awareness and kind of respond proactively. Another way to kind of operate with this SWOT is through KPIs, right? If one of our weaknesses is our deal, our sales cycle is 90 days or longer, and we want to cut that down because we know that deal goes on too long, we're going to lose it to a competitor. Maybe that's a KPI we start tracking if we're not already, right? So translating that SWOT into actionable things that each department can influence, I think is going to really, really help.
Agreed. And from the marketeers, like strategist perspective, any of those weaknesses, you want to find ways to turn them into strengths. And then if you find also commonalities across, so I'm trying to think how to just stay really high level with this. Somebody that I was working with recently, after doing this, we realized one of the things, including themselves and their competitors, were touting as a competitive advantage was their years of being in business. Every single one of them said how long that they were in business, and it was a very similar amount of years. And so well, that's not really an advantage if everybody else can say that. So what else can you be saying that they are not saying, or you can say better than what they are saying? So for example, one of the particular areas was that their competitors were touting they were specialists in a certain field, and that was important to the customer base that they had that sort of specialty in house. But come to find out, my client also had that same specialty and had higher results with same specialty. So all of a sudden we can start saying 98% of clients say this about us in this specialty and we can start putting some numbers to some of those weaker areas that we weren't touting before, but also stealing some of the competitive advantage from our competition that was already out there in the marketplace saying it. It's just we could say it better because we were doing it better. So all of that from a simple AI search that takes, say, 10 minutes to prompt and whittle down, and then you take it to the strategy session and say, okay, now how can we do this better? And what do we need to do to get some numbers put to some of this stuff?
I learned yesterday, this is off topic, but it's fun. Fun fact. A single inquiry into AI is single inquiry, not do a SWOT analysis. That's a big one, simple one. Takes 3 gallons of water. It consumes 3 gallons of water. So AI not only consumes a whole lot of electricity and everything that goes along with that, it also consumes a lot of fresh water. So a lot of recycling has to go on and that sort of stuff. It's just, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Sorry, my mind wandered, but that's what happens when you get to be me. I was thinking while you were talking though, Kim, and your client, I mean, had a better result, let's turn it the other way around. Somebody knows that they can't have those results. They don't have the money, the R&D, the reach. They don't have the resources to compete against this gigantic company that's all shiny and bright and is out there killing it. But somehow you've been in business for 20 years and you're puttering along and you got 30 people working for you and you're making a good living and you got some profit. I mean, what do you do with that company? Do you just tell them to quit, give it up because big shiny sterling company is there? I mean, what do you do? You can't compete on dollars because they'll bury you. Um, so what do you do then? And now I'm just going to be quiet.
I think I would need more information. Are they trying to compete toe to toe with the big giant that has all the investment funds, or are they going after a different part of the market? Like, are they getting, like, say, for lack of a better way of expressing it, just popped in my head, like the scraps. Like the big giant is saying, I don't want those customers because those jobs aren't big enough for me. I only want the like $100,000 deals versus this other company that's not as large, doesn't have all the funding. So I'll take the $50,000 deals all day long as my bread and butter. So I'd have to find out if they're going after different segments within the marketplace. But then also to find out, well, why? Why are people after 20 years still coming to you and using your services? I think that goes back to Matt's point with the customer research and doing customer surveys and finding out what are your uniques from the customer's perspective.
Well, I think that's your answer, especially the first one is what I was thinking of, in that they can reach a whole bunch of markets, but they're not going to be in every market. So you got to decide where your niche applies.
Mhm.
And if you're what's the name of the big chicken company? There's a
Purdue.
Purdue.
Purdue, yeah. Purdue sells chicken everywhere, but that little corner store, they're not going to have Purdue delivered. And like, he might be getting it from a distributor or something. But if you're in a small town in Ohio or Iowa and you have, fresh chicken, organic, chicken, I mean, now all of a sudden you got a business that's viable and you can compete because well, it's chicken, it's a different chicken and it's locally grown and it's healthy and all the rest of that stuff. European approved. I just had a conversation yesterday about our food versus European food. But healthy might be the way that you differentiate and all the rest of that stuff. So it's not always going to be that we can do it better. We're just going to do something different, and then we can find ourselves maybe never a $1 billion company, but we can be a successful company because we're competing where it makes sense for us to compete.
Oh, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. All right. So competitive intelligence, competitive analysis. How do we want to summarize this for those folks listening in on today's conversation? I think from my perspective, it's use the tools that are easily accessible, like ChatGPT. Spend the time, dedicate the time to doing it. It's going to be, I personally think, even more necessary going through the coming years to be able to differentiate yourself in the marketplace and have a really strong market position. So it's worth the time, make the time. You're not going to find the time. You're going to have to make the time to do it. And then share, communicate consistently, repeatedly communicate. And it's not a one and done analysis. It's keep tracking it, keep collecting the information, keep sharing it, and let it inform your messaging and your market position strategy on a continual basis, not just a once in the year type of thing. So those are the immediate things that jump to my mind. Matt, Dad, things you'd like to summarize on this topic for our listeners today?
I'll say just one additional thought, maybe to motivate, but to know that your competitors are doing this with you, right? Your competitors are doing this competitive analysis. They are finding out what your weaknesses are. They are trying to expose that as part of their sales process and marketing process, their communication process. So this is something you should be doing. Again, Kim, like you said, with the help of AI, find the time, make the time, put that time in. It's not a lot of time. You will get so much information that then you can act on. And I think that's the final thing I want to say is, information's great but if it's not acted upon, it's just information. So take advantage of that information, use it, share it among the teams, understand, work on addressing those weaknesses and those threats, highlight your strengths, create the sales KPIs that will drive and record progress that you've made on working towards those goals. So yeah, if you're not doing it, just know your competitors are, and that's not a great thing for your future. So
I like it. And Dan, closing
Yeah.
remarks for followers?
Yeah, I like everything's been said. My summary would just be make sure you understand that and Matt, you said this, so did you, Kim, but just to reiterate real briefly, whatever information you get is going to go stale fast. You can't say, I did that last year, it's fine. It's as the economy changes, as a new player comes in, a new product, whatever, it's a changing landscape. So I'm not going to say continuously, but regularly, you have to make sure that you are aware of what's going on in your space, or you'll get left behind and you won't even know it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. All right, awesome. Well, I very much appreciate this conversation. I love talking about this stuff. This is part of my favorite things that I get to do with people are these types of analyses and look to see, well, what are they up to? It's like, I'll be watching you. So I'm glad that we got to cover it today in our planning for 2026 with confidence series. Up next, in our next episode, we're going to talk pricing strategies. And Matt, thank you again in advance for joining us for that episode as well. So I look forward to that next week.
as do I.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. As always, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you ever have questions, feel free to post comments or reach out to any one of us at any time. We're always here and happy to help. Have a great day.